Everyone, it's Serotonin, back again. Um, I want to do a follow-up video to the one I did on Q or not to Q, or not to Q, and I ended up getting into the 13 bloodline, the 13 family bloodline, right at the end of the video, and there we have it in black and white. We have not only the Kennedy bloodline, but also the Onassis bloodline. And I want to point out that we have Rockefeller and Rothschild, and these ones that get a lot of, they're sort of thrown about a lot with hate and disgust, but nobody ever talks about the rest of these, including the Kennedys. I mean, everyone's like, oh, JFK, and now everyone's like JFK Jr. And, it was just last week on the Truth, Honor, and Integrity show that Thomas Williams reminded us that, if Q is JFK, that's not necessarily a good thing because he is part of the Kennedy bloodline. And I will show you exactly why that's not a good thing. Now, I started out on this page, the video, because I called the term that I was referring to, this super secret plan, I kept calling it galactic fascism, and it's not. It's called cosmic fascism. And I finally found my articles. Now, this one is actually printed through a website called Beyond the Haze, but the one I originally found was actually right here from Veterans Today, and that's exactly what it was. It was in 2017, and it was very compelling. And I am going to do a follow-up video on cosmic fascism. I am still trying to get through all of this stuff, and it's very interesting actually that it's also something that Starship Earth Big Picture had gotten a hold of as well. So I'm going to get right into reading this today, and I'm definitely going to present this to you because this is one of the reasons why I think it's very concerning that everyone is starting to assume that Q is JFK Jr. This is a massive assumption on everybody's part, and massive assumption is that this is a good thing for us. And it's not. I think we're just getting into we're becoming involved in a family feud that we have no part of. That is what I'm starting to wonder. Okay? I think that's what's going on. Now, when you look at the actual Kennedy family bloodline, there's not a good thing. There's a lot of alarming things that come out of this. So, yeah, it just basically says that they're just another Illuminati family. There's 13 Illuminati families. It's the 13 stars of the original Republic. And yeah, so are we just getting involved in a family feud we have no part of being? Something really important to recognize is that Kennedy does come from Ireland. The descendants had different spellings of the name. So there's Kennedy, spelled like this, and Kennedy, spelled like this. And what was very interesting is after that it was the O Kennedy. And O is of, as far as we know. Okay. And it says, oh, they remained past tense powerful into the 16th century. Right. Like there's ex-CIA too. We also have them divided up into three branches, the Don, the Fionn, and the Rua. The Scottish Kennedys, and of which there are many, and this is a lot of just sort of who's who, and it sounds like one of those British breeding magazines that they used to have. And here we go. Okay, so the question always arises, as I examine the elite of the Illuminati and the New World Order, how is Kennedy related to this other Kennedy? For instance, how is David M. Kennedy, who is a Bilderberger, by the way, and William Jesse Kennedy III, who is the key man for the Duke Illuminati family? He is the president of the Mutual Life Insurance Company, a Duke financial asset, director of the RCA, the trustee of the Ford Theater, where the elite killed Lincoln, and associated with Pilgrim Society through the Conference Board of New York City. Well, they say blood is thicker than water, so I don't know. Maybe these people really are, reaching out to the benefit of our futures. Who's to say? It looks like I have to plug my computer in, so I'm just going to do that. And sorry if you didn't hear me, I was just explaining to you that I was plugging in my computer. There we go. Okay. So begin at the beginning. One of my first clues that the Kennedys had something to do with the Illuminati was the conspiracy book The Widow's Son, Historical Illuminatus Chronicles, Volume 2 by Robert Anton Wilson. Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea, authors of Illuminatus, are not Christians. On the contrary, they are regular participants in the Central Ohio Starwood Festival for witches and pagans. Robert Anton Wilson has publicly on a number of occasions explained that he is a Gnostic and a great fan of Aleister Crowley. I picked up Wilson's books, The Widow's Son and the Satanic/New Age Bookstore, in both Volume 2, the teaser and chapter at the end, and Volume 3 of the Historical Illuminatus Chronicles. One is taught that the significance of Brian Kennedy, the first Kennedy, and how Brian Kennedy's blood got into some very important royal bloodlines. It is interesting that an informed man like Wilson, who spends time doing rituals with Gnostics and witches, would declare that the Kennedy family is an important bloodline in connection with the Illuminati. How many people knew that Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, was a descendant of the Kennedy clan? Wilson writes for New Agers and witches, not for Christians. One gets the feel that his experience with the occult has somehow given him a very good idea of what is going on in terms of the Masons, the Illuminati, etc. He writes his books in such a way that they are historical novels with a great deal of facts, yet one is always left wondering by the style of writing whether the author wants to be taken serious or not. Okay, that sounds like I'm getting into boring stuff here. I do want to mention here, oh, I've lost my train of thought, so I'm just going to move on. Yeah, I'm going to move on. Okay. Okay. Very interesting. John Fitzgerald, Kennedy. If J.F. Kennedy had not been assassinated and so much about his life examined and written about, a window allowing us to see the Kennedys' Illuminati family may never have opened so wide. First, the assassination attracted attention. In recent years, the Illuminati has given permission to publishing houses to print exposés of JFK's sexual life, etc. It is believed that this permission was given in an effort to deflect criticism of his assassination by allowing his reputation to be tarnished. I hope my readers are beginning to realize that things are totally corrupt at the top, and JFK was no different than so many others that have been and are today at the top of the political mess of the nation. He had a very active sex life, and even after he married Jackie, and even after he was president in the White House. And it goes on to, basically publicize a bit of that. Illuminatus George McBundy warned his friend JFK, and Bundy, by the way, is also one of the 13 Illuminati bloodline families. And I just want to mention that if you dig deep enough, you will find out that both Hillary and Bill are cousins. I don't know how far apart they are, but they're both related to the Rothschilds. So this is literally a family feud. It's just the Kennedys and the Rothschilds just duking it out for if this is what we think it is, if this is what the presumption is, then could be merely what we are witnessing here. Anyway, we go on. JFK was so open about his habit that at one party at the Mayflower Hotel, he openly had sex with one person in front of the party while his friend Senator Estes Kavaver did the same, and then they swapped and began again in plain view. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is what's very interesting. It is also relationships which reveal so much about the hidden satanic side of the Kennedys. John F. Kennedy had 3 long-term girlfriends, Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and Zsa Zsa Gabor, which were also, all of them, girlfriends of Anton LaVey, who headed the Church of Satan. Jane Mansfield was a high priestess in the church. Marilyn Monroe was a participant in the satanic rituals before LaVey founded his Church of Satan. Interesting. Both JFK and his brother Robert Kennedy had affairs going with Marilyn Monroe. And it just turns out that Robert Kennedy also had an affair with Jackie Kennedy after JFK was killed. They both visited her just prior to her mysterious death. Zsa Zsa has been interested for years in the occult. JFK also had relationships with other women connected with the Illuminati also. But before we examine the significance of these 3 relationships of JFK, and before we get into his liaisons with other women who are Illuminati connected, let's cover the relationship between Anton LaVey and the Illuminati. California was a very fertile soil for Satanism due to its host of factors. 2 lesser known factors were where Haitian communities which practiced voodoo in California at the early part of this century. Also, California became a haven for witches and Satanists fleeing from France. So, America, Cuba, and other places where satanic practices were not tolerated. California had a reputation for acceptance of their evil rituals, and when one adds this to such things as Hollywood, it is easy to see how San Bernardino Valley has become such a strong satanic center. Anton LaVey's maternal grandmother was from Pennsylvania. No, not really. Transylvania. Sorry, I just had to lighten this up. It was from that side of the family that Anton got some encouragement towards the occult. Anton LaVey loved horror movies and he studied Aleister Crowley in the OTO, which had lodges in California, which is where he lived. In 1947, he joined the Clyde Beatty Circus, and the Beatty family connects with the Illuminati families also, by the way. LaVey worked for several circuses and learned how to be a showman. He worked the occult sideshows of the circus and found that people wanted to believe occult frauds, and Anton LaVey found Marilyn Manson, a Jewish girl working as a striptease in the strip clubs, and LaVey helped her performance. Through his connections, got her started on her big career. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. LaVey used his talent of showmanship to create a type of Satanism that could be marketed to the public. LaVey always manages to walk a tightrope between openly supporting hardcore satanic practices such as human sacrifice and being just simply theatrics. In other words, he blatantly supports enough evil to attract people, but he publicly never allows himself to be connected in any way with child molestation, human sacrifice, etc. Anton LaVey was into Satanism before the 1960s, but it was not until 1966 that he founded the church. Some hardcore Satanists feel that it's all show. Other hardcore Satanists formed covens and tried to serve Anton LaVey because they view him as a role model. Who cares? Yeah. Yuck. All right. And they go on. So San Bernardino is the county as far as their headquarters. Doop-a-doop. The Illuminati is strictly hereditary. The Illuminati secretly control the satanic cults, which is sometimes described as stage 4, stage 5 of Satanism. The lower levels are for recruits, the grunts, the privates, so to speak, in the army. In the Bernardino area, one type of high priest of stage 2 or 3 is a master counselor. Other positions include the keeper of the books, the keeper of the seal, the keeper of the cheese. In the 1960s, Mike Warnicki, who is a high priest and master counselor, raised a number of Satanists in the first 3 stages. 1,500 members of the San Bernardino area. Bear in mind that these 1,500 active Satanist types of the world order who direct the upper levels of priests or the covens of Satanism are open to the public. LaVey participates in conferences for the occult where Satanism and secret Illuminati overseers are present. He is a publicity agent to give it a good image. Yeah, he's doing a great freaking job. Marilyn Monroe, we go on. He took Marilyn Monroe and helped her with her acting, and with his connections helped her get a chance to act. JFK had a long-term relationship with her. When he was elected at the convention to be presidential candidate, the Kennedys threw a party at the convention. The party was described this way. Every delegate at the convention was provided by the Kennedy group with anything they wanted for their entertainment, including liquor and women sent to their room. JFK spent a time at the convention and the next day afterwards making love to her. After his acceptance speech, the whole group went over to his close friend Peter Lawford's for a skinny dipping party. Him and Sammy Davis Jr., who's like, wow, he's a big Satanist, were close friends to each other and to John F. Kennedy. Sammy Davis became a member of the Church of Satan after LaVey started it. Interesting. During the 1960s, Jane Mansfield and John F. Kennedy had their relationship. They met at places like this, that, and the other. JFK had several men who bearded for him. This is that they would act like the women JFK was to get were their own date. And so one of the things that some guy called David Powers, who went even so far as to write a book, Johnny, We Hardly Knew Ya, whenever Jackie left Washington, and they would eat together and the president would say his prayers and go to bed alone. Whatever. It's funny. Sounds like Ned Flanders. Some of the other ongoing sexual relationships that JFK maintained were Lady Jean Campbell, the daughter of Duke of Argyll, Flo Pritchett Smith, the wife of the American ambassador to Cuba, K.K. Hannon Auchincloss, I don't even know what, whatever. Judith Campbell Exner, and Judith was Sinatra's girlfriend, who he passed on as a favor. That's not a girlfriend, that's a possession. Exner ran letters between the Mafia and JFK while he was president, of course. It's also known that JFK was in direct contact with Mayor Lansky and Joe Fischetti, two other Mafia chiefs, and that he benefited from the money they passed to him. Okay, boop-a-doop-a-doop. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I thought this was kind of interesting. This poem that apparently Jackie Kennedy wrote, which, whatever. He would find love. He would never find peace, for he must go seeking the golden fleece. I don't know. It's kind of lame. But that's kind of interesting because, it's Jason the Argonauts. That's probably another interesting thing to fit into. And it says here that he gave, this is interesting. One of the writing projects that I have wanted to see done, I have delegated to a good friend to give to my readers an article MJ12, aka the Wise Men, or the Study Group. This group of men actually run the United States, the Majestic 12. I do know a good deal about the Study Group. In fact, if my sources are correct, it isn't a formal group anymore. They are not formal meetings, but rather meetings happen at random with people accidentally bumping into each other, so they say. MJ12 draws members from the Jason Society and the Jason Group, and both of them are named after Jason and the Golden Fleece. There are reasons to believe that Jackie knew some of the power structure operated. Jackie was good friends with many of the top Illuminati men in the nation. In fact, she ended up marrying Onassis, who was part of he's another, as you may remember from the list, Onassis is another bloodline. So she was like right in there. She wanted to have an Illuminati husband. And there you go. Okay, this is a lot to get through, and I am going to link this to the bottom because there's a lot of interesting stuff. So then there's the whole bunch on his father, who is also Joseph Kennedy. And again, he worked closely with the Mafia, had other kingpins in the Illuminati. And this person's actually saying, yeah, there's so much in this article already, I can't keep going. And so, like father, like son, like father, like son. So I don't know. But I do know that what they're making very clear here, there's Jane Mansfield and someone from the Church of Satan. And apparently that's supposed to be a picture of Sammy Davis Jr. and some guy, Anton LaVey, but it's so like duotone. It's crazy. So I'm just going to wrap it up with this paragraph at the bottom here, because I'm sure this video is long enough. The intention originally was to have the article on the top Illuminati Kennedy family in two parts. Perhaps sometime a second part can come out. So far, I have only exposed a small part of the Illuminati Kennedy. It might be expected of any good Illuminati family. The Kennedy are connected to drugs, to the Monarch program, to death and euthanasia programs, to the British monarchy, and to various organized crime groups, mafias, etc. For this issue, I merely want to cover a few aspects of the Kennedy family, which I don't take time to cover in the May 15th, 93 issue. One aspect is the connection of the Illuminati Kennedys to the drug trade, and another of connection to death care and the Knights of Malta. After World War I, Joseph Kennedy worked for Galen Stone, who was partner in the prominent firm Hayden Stone Company. Hayden & Stone Company had ties to the Rothschild, and in order to gain respectability, Joe married into the Fitzgerald family. This is a common Illuminati tactic. It seems many of the Illuminati men look for a wife who will gain them respectability. Often wives like this are not even brought up into the Illuminati activities so that they can be the best cover possible. Kennedy's mob connection has been written about, but perhaps two are worth pointing out again. Joseph Lindsay, who was the kingpin of organized crime in New England and a partner in crime with Mayor Lansky, was a crime business partner with Joseph Kennedy. Joseph Lindsay was in fact listed as a top contributor to Ted Kennedy's Senate race 1 year. Andre Mayer, head of the Mayer family, was manager of the Kennedy estates, and one other business partner of the Kennedy was the Bronfmans. Oh yeah, what? Who were powerful Illuminati figures in Canada, and so were the DuPonts, who were also in that list. Kennedy was in business with Newark Rainfield Syndicate, of which the Bronfmans owned 50%. Winston Churchill, whose connections to the elite are brought out in other newsletters, personally gave the grant to Joe Kennedy, which gave him the Brit Alcohol Distillers franchise for the American market. After Joe Kennedy became the American ambassador to Britain, we can catch a glimpse of how powerful the Illuminatis are. The British royal family, at the request of Joseph Kennedy, put on their full royal regalia for the Kennedy family. When Kennedy arrived in Britain as American ambassador, he contacted the Astors and the Sassians. Like Vidal Sassoon? Jeez. Sir John Wheeler Bennett, founder and head of Rhea Research Division, is credited by those in the know as having written Kennedy's master thesis, which was later made in a book, Why England Slept. Perhaps one of the items best shows the hidden power behind Kennedy is his daughter's marriage to William Cavendish and Joseph Kennedy's comments about it. Kathleen married the Duke of Devonshire. The Duke of Devonshire was a very prestigious position within British nobility. Dukes are second only to the monarchy. Joseph Kennedy was often heard saying, "If Kathleen and her husband were living, I'd be the father of the Duchess of Devonshire, and the father-in-law to the head of all the Masons in the world." Kennedy, A Life and Times, Englewood Cliff. Joseph Kennedy was in the British branch of the Knights of Malta, which is called the St. Order of John. Interestingly, Jackie Bouvier, Kennedy Onassis' sister, Lee, married Prince Stanislaus Radziwill. The Radziwill family established the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, that's the Knights of Malta, in Poland in 1610. They also helped establish the order in the U.S. Another tie-in between the Kennedys and the Knights of Malta concerns the hospice movement. The Kennedy Institute for the Study of Human Reproduction and Bioethics, located at the Jesuit Georgetown University, is helping fund the Knights of Malta's hospice movement in America. In October 1978, the first annual meeting of the National Hospice Organization took place. Senator Edward Kennedy was one of the two keynote speakers. What is hospice movement, which is being conducted by the Hospitaliers, or which is one of the names of the Knights of Malta go by? It is a movement to allow old people the right to die. The Knights of Malta have an ancient history of running drugs and administering mind-altering drugs in their hospitals instead of giving medicine, which this ancient activity was carried forth into modern times when their St. Christopher's Hospital in London began giving patients Brompton mixture until they died. Brompton mixture consists of heroin, cocaine, alcohol, tranquilizers, and chloroform water. This mixture is given in the Knights of Malta hospitals to patients every 3 hours until they die. Euthanasia or mercy killing may seem like a merciful idea until a person finds out how the people at the top of the euthanasia movement view things. They view things similar to the Satanist, Adolf Hitler. This view is that it is merciful to get rid of unwanted people. Although the death hospice movement seems benevolent at first, it is the conclusion of where the program will end up that is the kicker. Hospice Incorporated, which is linked to the elite, is also providing funding by the Kaiser Foundation. I'm kind of freaking out right now because I used to work in hospice care as a therapist. This is nuts. Oh my goodness. Besides ties to running drugs, having problems with alcoholism, David Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. both have been addicted to hard drugs in spite of repeated treatments in detoxification centers. David later overdosed on cocaine and died in 1984, and Pat Kennedy's Lawford husband was dependent on drugs and alcohol. It is not well known that the Illuminati have long used drugs. Elite people such as the Rothschilds, Winston Churchill in London, the royal family were using all cocaine, heroin, and opium, not to mention occult ceremonies too. We do know that now. Queen Victoria thought many to be straight-laced lady, and her guests regularly used large quantities of cocaine and heroin. Sometimes you have to laugh. The royal summer residence was Balmoral, and this was the site of frequent drug use, and one has to wonder what else. We know what else. These people are sick. Look. There's so much to read. This is the short summary. This revisit to the Kennedys shows some of their ties to other elements of the Illuminati's vast scheme of things. Until people begin to recognize that the Kennedys wielded an occult power via their bloodline, they will not begin to appreciate why the Queen of England and her family would honor a request from an Irish commoner to have her family dress up in full regalia for the pleasure of this commoner's family. I don't know what that means. I don't know what they're referring to specifically. But it looked like it happened in 1908. Follow up on the Kennedy family. This is super, super big why I'm talking about this, because we still know that there is a huge faction of the alternative media who is trying to basically take over the movement towards freedom and towards sovereignty. And so this is why there's so many people who don't, talk about certain things, like, for example, the Man of World Holding Trust, or why they refuse to denounce the value reset and Bitcoin and all of that kind of stuff. So this is the whole cosmic fascism, and I'm going to follow this up, I promise, with a really I'm going to, well-researched video about specifically cosmic fascism, but I want to finish this because I have a feeling that this movement has been hijacked. I actually starting to think that, and I'm not trying to create division. I'm just trying to get everyone else to step back from the hype and just take a breather and just, these are these people, okay? And we're putting a lot of faith into a man, the son of a man. We don't know much about this son. I mean, he's been gone for the last 20 years. We know nothing about him, really. We just know that he is seeking revenge for the death of his father. This is what I'm wondering. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe, anyway, is it that he's seeking revenge for the death of his father? Or is he really here to help us become liberated? Now, I do think that Trump, for the most part, is doing a good job behind the scenes, but lately there's been a lot of question as to why, and why he's not being more honest and why things aren't coming out a bit more. Now, I totally get the plan takes a while to unfold, and I get that, and this is a military operation. I totally get that, but there was some words in some of these articles that I've been reading, and just the whole wording around the plan, being like, well, we have to, it's good for optics. It's important to drip feed. Like, I don't know about this anymore. I just don't know. I don't know. I'm in a place of pure questioning all over again. So yeah, anyway, I'm sorry if I'm pissing everyone off by this, and I'm really just here as the messenger to show you what I find. And this is what I found. Okay, follow up on the Kennedy family. There has been a new attention focused on the Kennedys. JFK's widow died when his mother, Rose, had also died recently. Last year I read a book which was very well researched. It is entitled A Question of Character, A Life of John F. Kennedy by Thomas C. Reeves. The book does away with all the propagandas, media hype, and lies and tells the truth about the Kennedys. The book is well documented, and the author spent a great deal of energy trying to find the truth about JFK. What emerges is not a public image that is so well known. JFK had only about 119 IQ, did very poorly in school, and could barely spell. His father had the wealth and connections to buy his son anything. Although Kennedy had a back problem which made him almost crippled, his father got him into the Navy during World War II. When he was let in, the examining doctors looked the other way at this back problem, which plagued him his entire life, and Kennedy got a commission as a naval officer without having to go through the normal channels of training and being commissioned. As a naval officer, he did a poor job, and the great PT-09 story was far different than what the public has been led us to believe. In fact, that Kennedy let his boat be run over by a Jap destroyer because he and his crew weren't paying attention. Kennedy realized he might be court-martialed for his negligence, but his father had the money to turn the disaster into a story that made Kennedy into a hero. Some of the things you will learn from the book follow. In the chapter, The Foundling Family, as we learn about P.J. Kennedy, who's JFK's grandfather, he dropped out of grammar school. By the age of 25, he had somehow had ownership of a saloon and a liquor business. Later, he sold his liquor interest and went into banking. Don't forget the Bronfman ties here, people. He also went into politics via corruption, was a successful politician. He won elections by hiring men to vote repeatedly for him. Joe Kennedy remembered two ward healers proudly telling Joe Kennedy's father, who was on the election commission, "Pat, we voted 128 times today." Joe, PJ's son, married Rose Fitzgerald. The Fitzgeralds were a mighty Italian clan that helped William the Conqueror become the ruler of England. Honey Fitz was her father, and he had a reputation for graft and vote fraud, as well as not-so-secret notorious affair with a girl named Toodles. I love it. Sorry, Toodles is hilarious. Graft and grifter has been words that have been coming up lately. I just wanted to mention that. Rose got her education in the Catholic Sacred Heart Convent, which she completed a month before her 20th birthday. Her father was removed from the House of Representatives after voting fraud was uncovered. Joe was acquainted with Roosevelt when FDR was only Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and Joe became an insider with the stock market and knew how to manipulate stock prices to fleece the small fish that tried to play the stock market. Various gangsters reported that during Prohibition they had smuggled illegal liquor into the U.S. with Joe Kennedy. Joe worked with David Sarnoff in his Radio Corps of America. Joe had extremely varied sexual life. He had affairs with countless women, and his son JFK followed in his footsteps. He bought a 15-room, 9-bath home in Hyannisport, Massachusetts on Nantucket Sound. This became a favorite summer home of the Kennedy clan. He also bought a 6-bedroom Spanish-style house on the fashionable North Ocean Boulevard at Palm Beach, which became the clan's winter home. Rose described as self-centered, stingy, prudish, and often spiteful. Her servants called her Madam. Rather than being a role model mother that is pictured to the American public by the Kennedys, she was often gone. JFK told his mother off at 5. Gee, you're a great mom to go away and leave your children alone. As an adult, JFK confided to a friend, my mother was either at some Paris fashion house or else on her knees in some church. She was never there when we really needed her. My mother never really held me and hugged me. Never, never. Further, his father's lack of respect for his mother led JFK to say, my mother is a nothing. So says the man who is a womanizer. Imagine growing up without a mother to hug you or kiss you. JFK's father tolerated little nonsense and no disobedience. The life JFK lived at home was not a life of compassion, but one of rigid obedience. The children were stripped of many things ordinary children would have. They didn't have their own rooms. Most children would have a room of their own at some time in which to place their belongings and knickknacks. A few times JFK as a boy invited friends over, and they were frightened to death at how his father would fly into a rage and give the Kennedys boys a tongue lashing. The children were not allowed to express pain. For instance, when one of the Kennedys were hurt and came to his mother for sympathy, she ordered, on your feet. Now you have to behave. Go out there and behave as though you know you should. It is highly likely the strictness was related to some type of mind control, which was even then practiced by satanic families. Joe had his daughter given a prefrontal lobotomy and then banished to a nursing convent. From then on, his daughter Rosemary did not exist. One wonders the full story about Rosemary. Was she sexually abused, as is done to so many of the elite's daughters of satanic families? Felix Frankfurter, who played such a prominent role with Charles T. Russell, was a good friend of Joe's. JFK managed to hide from the public during his life the fact that he had wore glasses and also, to some degree, his intense back pain, which hurt him intensely. On page 40, we learn that JFK was unable to ever have any self-revealing conversation. He had a total lack of ability to relate. Everything was either very surface in his relations with people. He was very skilled at picking up women and getting them into bed. And he had many, many good friends. However, he didn't have the ability to love or relate to others. This is another clue that he may have had some type of SRA abuse. SRA is satanic ritual abuse. On page 40, Reeves writes, at the root of it were months of loneliness and their parents' often selfish and insensitive behavior. I wonder it didn't go deeper. From what I know from informers, it goes deeper and involves SRA. JFK wasn't even told of his brother Teddy's birth until he came home from boarding school and discovered he had another brother. He was very unsuccessful at most everything he did. His father had so much influence and power that he could get his son out of almost any difficulty. A friend of his recalled, with Jack, nobody really admired what he did or respected what he did, but they liked his personality. Interesting. When he flashed his smile, he could charm a bird off a tree. At the age of 17, he went to Harlem to a brothel. Later, he nicknamed his sexual organ JJ. Meanwhile, his father was the chairman of Securities and Exchange Commissioner, and an informal advisor to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. I might add here that if you look closely, you'll find the Illuminati kings are advisors to all the presidents. I have mentioned some of these already, like in the article on Bundy Illuminati family. Another example, I wonder if Ted Bundy is related to that, because that's bizarre. Another example may be found in the book The Old Boys, The American Elite and the Origins of the CIA by Burton Hirsch. On page 41 of The Old Boys, we learn that President Eisenhower's special assistant for Cold War strategy was Nelson Rockefeller. The most dangerous situation this country has ever been was on the threat of the Russian military, who was the primary advisor to President Eisenhower during his term as U.S. president during the Cold War. Illuminati king Nelson Rockefeller. JFK went for 1 year to London School of Economics, according to the story given to the public. Actually, he went there for 1 month, but he didn't do any academic work and came back home. But it is significant that his father tried to send him to a school in which so many of the elite have gone to. JFK had help in writing and putting out a book entitled Why England Slept. Henry Luce, who headed Time Life and who was a good friend of Joe Kennedy's, gave the book good publicity in Time magazine. And his father bought between 30,000 to 40,000 of the books and stored them in the attic and basement of his Hyannisport home in order to make his book a bestseller. When JFK went to California in 1940, one of the places he stayed was at the William Randolph Hearst, who was another Illuminati figure on the Coastal Castle. Hearst would later give help to Kennedy later on too, and when Kennedy ran in politics, Hearst's Boston American, wouldn't even accept Kennedy's opponents, paid political advertisements. Joe Kennedy worked for FBI after World War II. JFK's favorite sister Kathleen married William Harrington, whose father was the 10th Duke of Devonshire, the pillar of the Church of England, called the Episcopalian Church in the U.S., and a high-ranking Freemason. After marrying him, she had an affair with aristocrat Peter Milton, Lord Fitzwilliam. After Joe Jr. died, JFK's father started grooming JFK to become president. And after Jack was elected to the House of Representatives, his 3 best congressional friends were Richard Russell, another Illuminati family, the Russells, Spencer Holland, Robert A. Taft. Notice that two of these are from well-known Illuminati families. Yes, exactly. The Tafts and the Russells. Yes, by the way, the occult Tafts and the occult Russell families have intermarried. Because there's so much disinformation out about the people who run this country, it must sometimes seem rather bizarre that people like me come along and say there is a satanic conspiracy of great magnitude. If Americans were as whole critical thinkers and would challenge the propaganda that the controlled media gives them, then the false fronts and the false public images of their leaders might not get written up so easily as history. There are not many critical thinkers in this nation. There's a great many intelligent people, but not a great many critical thinkers. A conspiracy of great magnitude has had this nation in its grips since the nation was founded, and the controlled press has managed to prevent the general population from finding this conspiracy out. The Kennedy family has played a role in that conspiracy. JFK gave his life to that conspiracy. The assassination of JFK is one of the best ways to introduce Americans to the conspiracy. Ralph Epperson, who gives talks and slideshows about the NWO to groups, likes to use the Kennedy assassination as a method to get people to realize that there is a conspiracy. Interestingly, Ralph Epperson has had a comparison for a while without knowing it, an active monarch slave who helped him give presentations. It is difficult for those exposing the NWO to get away from being infiltrated. The monarch mind control slaves are very difficult to detect, especially since most people don't even know they exist. Fantastic! This is amazing. So guys, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm just delivering the news. And you know, I really appreciate your attention and your time to this. So take it for what you will. You have been informed. Have a wonderful day.